of free energy. We know we got free energy in the wind and the solar and the gravity. The force of water is gravity. Magnets, the electromagnetic. We have all kinds of free energy, and there's a whole lot more just waiting to be explored. So you're going to tell us about it. Thank you, Jeane.
Thank you, Larry. And it's really great to be here with the hydroxy revolution heroes and people like Larry Jarbo, who worked on things like electric vehicles for 30 years, and these are the people that are really doing the revolutionary work. It's a grassroots movement, and this is what's going to bring us a better world. This people's movement to take back our power over our energy choices. And there's a whole variety of other possibilities out there that I've explored. I'm not a scientist, not an engineer. My university degree is in sociology, so what am I doing here? Well, I'm also a journalist, and I write about the international scene that's going on around the world, where there are inventors in all sorts of countries. I've gone to conferences in Europe and the UK and a lot of North America, and I've interviewed the scientists and the physicists who are working on a whole variety of alternatives. And they're considered the fringe right now, some of the variations, but I predict that at some point those who've been the kind of snottiest critics of this technology will find themselves in the fringe when it turns out that they may have missed something important that could really add to our lives. And so what I present is not the how-to, which I think is just wonderful what's going on here. You're telling each other the how-to, and you're telling each other what works, and we really need these events happening out on the West Coast and up in Canada, where I live in British Columbia, and all over the place to repeat what you're doing. And it's already going on out on the internet, and that's what gives me a lot of hope, is because I guess a lot of you have gotten together on the internet and shared knowledge before, but there's nothing like getting together face to face, is there, where you can actually ask each other questions and hands-on try out what somebody's experiment's been doing and working on. So I'm just going to present to you some of the other things that people are working out there, and because this is kind of an introduction, and I don't see very many women in the audience, and I'm kind of assuming that this is mostly a technical audience, so that I hope you'll bear with me the fact that this is not a how-to talk. This is an overview. This is a picture of some possibilities that are being worked on. There's a definition by Peter Lindemann: free energy is any energy that's provided by the natural world. And I want to make the point that even though I've hung out with people that are working on things like magnetic motors and solid-state zero-point energy experiments, and find that all very exciting, still, this is a place where I lived up in the British Columbia when I was house-sitting a lovely log home with solar power, and I very much appreciate the fact that we already have renewables that we can carry forward. But the thing is, we can also make them a lot more efficient, and that's what you guys are working on, is taking what we have. And I just had to throw a granddaughter picture in there. The point I was trying to make there is actually the children in the inner cities. The Harvard Medical School did a study showing that the rates of asthma just skyrocketed, and for those kids that have to breathe a lot of diesel exhaust and everything, that's the cause. And little Sarah there, that's not her own puffer. Her mother was the one who finally succumbed to air quality, would have helped her live a lot longer. So that's what motivates me, and I think what probably motivates a lot of you is the children. So I talk about the whole, in our book, Breakthrough Power, we write about the whole spectrum, the whole range of alternatives that are not really being given enough coverage in the mainstream media. And of course, solar and wind are getting plenty of coverage, and everybody knows that these industries are growing rapidly, and that's wonderful. But what people don't really realize is that the worldwide market for energy is also growing very rapidly with China and India. Folks want to have the same standard of living that they see on televisions as our standard of living. And so many more cars being sold around the world. It's the fact that the standard renewable energies are growing is wonderful, but it's not really overtaking the percentage of the pie that the fossil fuel related energy industries are holding. And even Department of Energy projections are that in the year 2020, there'll still be 80-some% of the energy pie that will be fossil fuel related. They're just saying there'll be more coal. But so we really do have to have some breakthroughs. And I mentioned a solar breakthrough that really didn't get a chance. Alvin Marx's Alumaloid and Lepcon in the little slide there. And another thing that could really provide a lot of our electricity needs is the power that's out there in the form of riptides off our coasts of every continent. And yes, that industry is growing, but it's not to the extent that it really could be supplying us with power. And in our stories of well, suppression or whatever you want to call it, even that industry has not been given a chance. But this Blue Energy Canada, this tidal power fence, they're finally getting some funding. I just got a phone call a few days ago that they'll probably start a big project in Scotland because they're finally signing some big deal. That's good news. And okay, so this is way over on the other end of the spectrum of energy technologies are the well, in the book we talk about some of the history of some of the interesting inventions and the most bizarre maybe, but also the most interesting, John Keeley back in the 19th century, and that was the recreation of part of his technology. And they're over on, again, still over on that far end of the spectrum. You know, David Hamill up in Canada actually did have a flying disc take off and go over the ocean. And that was just a detail from. And there's also, I'm sure you heard about the Joe cell, and the concept of orgone is clear off on that end of the spectrum too. But you know, what about life force? What is it that actually allows us to get by on very little food, and even as human beings, maybe we're feeding on some of the background energy of the universe. I look at a very active little 4-year-old who eats like a bird, and I think, where does that energy come from? So some experimenters have had success with those, but of course they're very difficult to repeat. And I made a collage of all sorts of pictures I've taken over the years, with the point that there is such a variety of approaches, and so if you don't like one, you just think, I don't want to have anything to do with that, that's too flaky, then go look elsewhere in the whole variety. You can just discriminate. And of course, choose the small is beautiful. That would be my prejudice. Decentralized power. I was just making a point that on one side of a great divide, we have the conventional renewables, which are very well accepted and being funded now, and that's really wonderful. And on the other side of the divide is uncharted territory where very few will go and even have a look. But there's some very fascinating, exciting experiments and proof of principle prototypes over on that side of the divide.